Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of The Social Circle. We are doing a series on men's issues, and today we're going to talk about the value of a father figure in a young man's life. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it, starting from there.
Hi everyone, my name is Isaac, and I'm happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Peter. I am happy to be on the show.
Yeah, and my name is Ramsey. I didn't tell you that before, and I'm also happy to be here. So we're gonna dive right into it. We're talking about the value of a father figure in a young man's life. It's one of the pertinent issues in today's society, especially given that men are facing some kind of crisis as far as their visibility, their prospects are concerned. And one of the issues we have is that there are some ideas around that we may be having a lot more single parent families than we should. Now, it's interesting because we have a lot of stuff going around. In psychology, we do have the archetype of a father, according to Carl Jung's theories. And he's supposed to be, it's got both a bright side and a dark side to it. And a father, like the bright side, is supposed to be what encourages you to find your true value and transcend obstacles and fulfill your purpose. And the dark side, of course, is like the tyrannical father who abuses authority and has a cold intellectual way of relating to others. The statistics are pretty interesting. I have gone through a few, and for example, a few statistics from fatherhood.com show that in the West, about 10% of households in 1960 did not have a father. Today, about 40% of households do not have a father, and that's an interesting piece of statistics. There are also statistics from various studies showing that boys without fathers are more likely to engage in drugs and alcohol. Girls without fathers are more likely to get pregnant and start menstruating early. Boys without fathers are more likely to commit crime, go to prison, face 4 times the risk of poverty for consequences. This is true of both genders. Yeah. Closer to home in Kenya, it's known that, for example, that traditionally fathers have we come from a traditional patriarchal society where the father was right at the top, and even men without children would not be allowed to be elders. And a lot of the raising of boys was taken up by the male members of society and so on and so forth. But with colonialism, we saw a lot more men moving to urban areas to work and make a living and learn, and leaving their wives and families back in the rural areas. So fatherhood took more of a passive role, where the father would work as a financial benefactor, but wouldn't really be present in the raising of the children. As a result, this is kind of like a trend that's continuing to today, where a lot of people complain about passive fathers, and we still have fathers going to work in urban areas like Nairobi, the capital city, while their families remain back in rural areas. Interestingly, we also have some interesting statistics from Kenya. For example, 30% of children of any age live in a single parent family, according to the 2010 census. Also, if you look at prisons, you will see that about 46% of inmates were fatherless in Kenyan prisons. It's according to a report by a PhD student at the University of Nairobi called Ndirangu Winjiri. Shout out. Good work. 60% of juvenile inmates come from fatherless homes. And for me, the real kicker is that 90% of convicted rapists in Kenyan prisons come from fatherless homes. Now, we have a few important questions arising from this. We're going to try and make this an open-ended discussion. I'd like to hear their opinions on the matter. And we're going to try and inform it given the current, what's going on the ground, especially in our country. So, welcome, Isaac and Peter. Welcome. So, we're going to get right to it. So, we're going to start with a bunch of personal questions. So, for each of you, tell me, were you raised by a single parent, single father, single mother, or did you grow up in a home with both parents? We can start with Isaac.
Interestingly, I wasn't raised by either of my parents.
Okay.
They were both not in the picture.
Okay.
I was raised by my grandma on my mom's side, my dad wasn't in the picture until I was much older.
Mm-hmm.
And
Approximately how old?
I was probably 15, 16.
15, 16 when you
Yeah.
first started interacting full time with your dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And probably about the same age with my mom as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And how was it? How was the experience for you growing up, being raised by your grandmother?
I would say when I was younger, I did wonder where my parents were, but I think as I grew older, I kind of wrapped my head around the fact that they couldn't be around for work reasons.
Yeah.
And
So they were working, that's why they weren't present?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting. So basically, your parents weren't necessarily absconding, they were just busy.
Yes.
And so your grandmother took on the mantle.
Yes, they worked abroad, so.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. What about you, Peter?
My story is quite interesting as well because I come from the family, extended or nuclear.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's
So-
nuclear if it's just you and your two parents. It's extended if there are other relatives.
Yeah. So it is an extended family, and if you can just put a pin to that discussion of where I come from or whatever, the idea of fatherhood or parenting did not appear to me as much until CC introduced the topic to me. And then now I started thinking about it. So it was nowhere in my mind the role of a father or what my father did for me or all of that.
But did you have like a father figure? Did you have like male members of society who you really looked up to and who like helped raise you?
I can say it's my dad, which is why I said we put a pin to that and then come to it later.
Okay.
So I can say my dad, when I started thinking about it now that CC introduced the topic, then I started recalling the events which led me to who I am today.
Yeah.
So I think my dad played a very vital role.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of he used to have conversations, not daily or weekly, but once in a fortnight. He used to have conversations. He could tell us about life issues. He could tell us about education. He could tell us about everything.
Wow. Yeah.
So I started recalling, and then it is now that it makes sense because in the same setting where we had the same peers who did not really make it because they did not have that connection with their dads.
Okay.
So personally, I can say it's a very important aspect to have a father or a parenting figure, especially when you're growing up, and it picks up from a very tender age.
Okay, okay. That brings me back to you, Isaac. Like, you were raised by your grandmother up until 15, 16 when you now started interacting more with your parents.
Right.
Did you have a father figure in that period? Was there a particular male member of your family or society that you would say you interacted a lot with and that you learned a lot from?
Right, I would say my uncle was
Your
there
uncle.
a lot.
Okay.
And that could be the guy that I would say was the father figure at the time.
Okay.
He was home a lot, and like Peter's dad, he used to talk me through things because my mom and himself are siblings.
Okay.
So I think he would explain to me what happened and why my mom couldn't be there and why my dad couldn't be there.
Yeah, exactly.
As I got older,
Yeah.
and as I went through like different life stages, completing primary school, completing high school, he could tell
Adolescence,
me.
that's a crazy period.
Exactly. So I think that was my mentor at the time, and I could say that he really helped me, like get a grip on life and just figure myself out during that, like really confusing time.
Okay,
Like,
okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. There's an interesting point Peter's brought up, which has to do with like extended families versus nuclear families. It's like if you live in a nuclear family, or if you live in what is essentially a stub of a nuclear family, like if you're a single parent, our father missing is just that. It's a father missing,
Right.
and you're going to miss out on a lot. But it seems like this problem is at least partly mitigated if you live in an extended family, because that vacuum can be filled by any number of male relatives.
Exactly.
An uncle here, a grandfather there,
Yeah.
an older brother maybe.
Right.
It seems like extended family is a really good insurance policy against absentee fathers. Yeah. I don't know, I'm not quite sure, I haven't done any research on this in the Kenyan situation, but you do see a tendency towards extended families in some communities more than in others, and it seems that the more westernized a particular family, the less likely they are to have an extended family situation, because they live in a capitalist society. It's expensive to host a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like if you're living more in the rural areas, also in some communities, even in the Western world, some ethnicities just promote extended families more, and I think these ethnicities do suffer less from the absence of fathers more than others.
Maybe if I can just cut you short, it depends with so many variables.
Yeah.
Because, when you have an extended family, it's very difficult for a father to balance, especially when he sires many children at the same time. So it becomes very difficult, especially for the father, to balance where to go and where to spend the evenings or the days all together. So when it comes to advantage, as you said, I did not quite understand, because most of this family, you find out that they don't blend in so well. So hawasikilizani.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult to assume that having an extended family squares out the problem of parenting or absentee of.
Yeah, that's a good point, because obviously it's one thing to have an extended family, it's another to have an extended family that's cohesive.
Yeah.
Like if you have a family with constant squabbles and some weird kinds of family vendettas, then it's really hard. Your uncle hates your mother's guts because he's from the father's side, so he's not going to provide you with any particular parenting or anything like that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But all factors held constant,
Yeah.
you have to agree that you are better off in an extended family with male members who are invested in your own upbringing, as opposed to one where it's either your father or not. Like if you're gonna make bets, you want as many invested male members around you as possible.
Yeah, actually, I appreciate, because for my case it was much easier, because we are in good terms from all the families.
Yeah.
And anyone could look up for you.
Now that said, you've also brought up an interesting point, which is that on the one hand, we have this assumption, I think, that when we're talking about fatherhood, it's a bit narcissistic. It's like, what's a good father to me? Was I raised well by my father? But let's say you are one of a family of 12 children, and then now your father has to somehow split himself 12 ways, which means, and being human is obviously going to favor some more than others, which means some of the kids will feel neglected, even in a family where the father is present. And I don't know what this says about very large families where there are a lot of children versus small families where the father can dedicate himself more to the kids, to like a single kid or 2 kids. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I think being married myself, I think that's...
oh, you're married?
Yeah.
Well, that's a new piece of information.
That's like the dilemma.
Yeah, we actually... Are you a father?
No, not yet.
We have a prospective father on set,
so I would say that that's like a very, important question to think about, large family, small family. Looking back at whether, someone's a good father or not, I would really say that the children's perspective, children often cannot really tell what a good father or a bad father was. Okay, there are like standards which you can generally tell, okay, this guy is not a good guy, this guy is a good guy.
Yeah.
But most times children have this idealistic approach to parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
They do not give their parents any credit or cut them any slack when they go wrong.
But children are naturally narcissistic.
Yeah, I mean, they just
like
full of
me,
themselves,
Why are you doing this for me?
Exactly. And so, any small failure on the part of parents usually counts as, my mom wasn't a good mom, she would...
yeah, it's a biased view.
Yeah, it's always...
Because she didn't buy that one toy.
Exactly.
12 years ago.
Exactly.
She's a terrible mother.
So I would say that children are not the best people to ask
about
was this a good parent?
Yeah, exactly.
And so coming back to big families or small families, I would say that I think that, and people usually appreciate their parents more when they're gone, that most of the people realize the impact that their parents had on their lives after they're gone, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
When that impact is no longer being felt.
Exactly.
They'll miss the water when the well runs dry.
That reminds me of a point, like, it's just to add to your point, it's also when you become a grown-up and you face some of the challenges they told you would face, you didn't think you would face, and suddenly you start to see the value in the lessons, right?
Yep.
So, Isaac, you were saying that if we want to judge character, where should we judge from? For like a parent, father or mother? Because obviously the children are the worst people to ask.
Interestingly, I would say the children, but after they've grown up.
After they've grown up.
Yes. I think there's a certain age that an individual will get to, and they have enough maturity to just measure things from a balanced perspective.
I was actually talking about that before we went on that break, and it was like it's not just about asking. You were saying that we only miss our parents when they're gone.
Yeah.
It's like it's not just that. It's also we miss our parents when we actually experience life, adulting, and we start to see real applications.
Yeah.
My favorite quote in this particular area comes from like Mark Twain, the author. He was like, "When I was 14, I thought my father was the most foolish person on the planet. By the time I turned 21, I was surprised how wise the man had grown." Now, of course, the joke here is that the father was exactly the same. It's Mark Twain that had grown wiser in the 7 years between 14 and 21. And I've experienced that personally. I mean, to pick a frivolous example, I used to hate making my bed. My father always be my kids, make your bed, you lazy, inconsiderate human being. Make your bed. Try to make your living space good. First of all, it's good for your mind, because a decluttered room is a decluttered mind. Second of all, it teaches you responsibility. And I used to think he was an absolute dictator. I live alone now, and I think for a while when I first started living alone, I was just okay with letting my house turn into a pigsty. I mean, it's my house. I pay the bills. Why do I care? I mean, who's going to tell me to clean stuff? And then eventually you start seeing the mold in the dishes, you start smelling the garbage, you start, sleeping in your own filth, and you're like, I can't live like this. And you start making your own bed. You think you've arrived at it by logic, and you start seeing the sense, like I've learned through experience why this is a wise decision. But your father was taking away the need to learn through experience by giving you the hack from day one. Just make your bed. You don't have to understand why, just do it. Like now I do it, I wash my dishes in time, and looking back I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm doing the exact same things I used to rebel at as a child. And now I appreciate a lot more the lessons used to give.
But I think children can judge. There's a point where my friend here said that at a certain age is when you can judge. You can judge a parent by their deeds. From my experience, it's pretty much different, because sometimes you are just away from school for fee and other things. And then you will see the parents struggling. Sometimes he could cheat, could even write a letter so that you take it back to the teacher on duty, or the teacher who has sent you fee. So I think at that time, however small, you can easily tell, he does not have money, but he chooses maybe to find an excuse or something. So it is the children are the ones to judge at any given age, because they see their parents suffering, they see they're struggling, and at some point, even when they're just from school, they don't really go back home to ask for fare. For fee, sorry.
Exactly.
They don't go back home to ask for fee because they understand that there's nothing home.
Exactly.
So inside them, they have the credibility or the authority to judge whether the father or the parent is working as hard.
I think you have a good point, but I think it kind of does tie in to Isaac's point, because it also depends on the maturity of the child in question. If the child is mature enough to recognize and appreciate the sacrifice the parents make, then they're a good judge of character. And sometimes it's a matter of age. I certainly didn't know the kind of sacrifices, for example, that my parents were making. I was raised by a single mother up to a point, and then she remarried, And I mean, my original father was a hit and run, and so she remarried at some point, and I had a stepfather. And so like I got a bit of both experiences. I got the experience of being raised by a single mother up until 11, and I got the experience of having both parents, an adoptive father. And while it was rocky, I did get to see both sides of that particular coin, and I got to see the sacrifices they were making. But I won't lie to you and say that I fully appreciated those sacrifices at like 10. It was later on, like, you know, like 17, and I'm just trying to get into university, and I can see how they're suffering, and now I kind of look back retrospectively at how they've suffered through my entire education. I'm like, wow, these people have put a lot, but I couldn't possibly have appreciated why the hell my mother couldn't give me a little more pocket money at 10 years old. For me, it was just, you know, why aren't you giving me money? I want money. I want to buy the stuff my friends have. It was later on that I was like, you know, for the little these people have, they managed to make a small amount of money look infinite. They were pretty good budgeters, you know. My father had this habit of writing post-dated checks. My school fees, like, oh, you got chase, well, I'll write this post-dated check dated 2 weeks from now. And somehow I'm gonna have faith that they'll put money in that account in 2 weeks. And I started appreciating this when I started understanding what a post-dated check was. Like, wow, this guy really just wants to buy me that 2 extra weeks so I don't fall behind in class. And if I get kicked out of class in 2 weeks, we'll write another post-dated check. So it's like a time-buying strategy. It's like the fact that he's willing to do this definitely means he cares.
I think so many of our parents, I would say, was a single parent, or you know, like a small nuclear family. We can't really talk about their impact, you know, in terms of, it's more rare to talk about their impact in terms of mentorship and all that. But when we just look at that financial aspect, you know, like the sacrifices they made so that we can be who we are today.
Yeah.
You know, money-wise, you know, we live in a developing country. Not too many people have, you know, like.
And developing is arguable. I'm not arguing. It's no longer developing.
So, I mean, money is hard to come by.
Yeah.
And you know, so just to think about the kind of financial sacrifices. You know, we have a generation of kids today who are complaining that their parents are not speaking to them enough. You know, they're not telling them, I love you, you know, I care for you, and all these words. But coming from that perspective where, you know, some of our parents were raised in homes with 6, 7, 10 children.
Yeah.
And then down to us, 4, 5 children, 2 children maybe, but they were still struggling financially.
Yeah.
And they made ends meet.
Yeah.
And we don't really appreciate the kind of, you know, sacrifice they had to put in to get us there.
What is your favorite memory of something your father did or said or gave to you? Father figure. This is just to like help us establish like the kind of value you feel like your father left or father figure in your life, something that has stayed with you up until this day as an adult. We'll start with Isaac.
I would say that growing up, like I said, my parents were working abroad, and they weren't really around, and my uncle was there.
Okay.
People who know me can tell that I have a very strong sense of patience.
You are a very patient person.
Yes.
Okay.
And I do believe that
if he does say so himself.
You know, I'm just quoting people who know me.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be tweeting my own.
Good point. Good point.
So, but they say that, and looking back at my past, I would say that the people around me when I was younger always told me that to be patient. Soon, you know, we'll be reunited with my family. And that it will come sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe you develop patience as a natural consequence of a specific situation which you grew up, because you had to wait for your parents. So you had to develop this quality.
I would say that, and I would say that now that I'm older, when I was say 20, 22, I mean that was not a strong trait. But now that I'm older, I can really say that you know, say if I'm putting my money somewhere for an investment and I
Yeah.
have to wait, say 3-5 years, I can really put my hope that, this thing in 5 years, it will
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So I'll be like,
I'll wait the 5 years out.
let's
I'll
just
drink coffee.
So I would say that is something, that's a trait, that's a positive trait that I actually picked up from that experience.
Patience is an incredible quality of the modern world. They like to call this the microwave generation, simply because, well, obviously the microwave makes things faster, but also because we just have a general tendency towards seeking instant gratification. You go to social media, you post something, you get instant likes, you feel this rush of dopamine that, I'm famous. People like this thing I posted, people I don't know, and now I'm gonna let them validate my entire existence. This is very rampant. What about you, Peter?
I think for my case, it's various events, I can say. But growing up, it was very difficult to identify or realize the aspect of parenting. Because whenever you're chased from school and you go to ask for fee, it seemed normal.
Yeah, it's like it's your job.
Yeah, so like it's your job.
Pay my fees.
Pay my fees and all that. You could not even see the extent of the struggle or something like that.
I don't care that you're a cobbler. Pay my 60,000 shilling fee
you
right
could
now.
not see the sacrifice you
Yeah.
made. And that was at tender age. But then, during that time, we did not have real conversations.
Yeah.
Because it could not make sense when your dad comes and then you talk one-on-one, you're 10. So it was actually...
Yeah, a 10-year-old is not gonna have tell me about being a man.
Yeah, the main means...
Forget all I care about
The main
right now.
means of communication was cracking a whip. You did a mistake, you lay down, you get 4 or 5 strokes, that's it.
That's
But
an
then,
interesting point.
yeah,
That's an interesting point.
when I finished my high school now, I also felt as a grown up.
Yeah.
I felt we can have a conversation, and instinctively, that is the time my father knew it is time for real conversation.
Okay.
So when you are applying to join universities and different courses and all that, my father said one thing up to this time, I'm still holding on to it.
Yeah.
He said that people go to universities to create jobs, not to get employed. So I think that is the first time I had real conversation with my dad, and that's all that I came out with from that conversation. It has been driving me since, and it has helped me in many ways.
People go to university to create jobs, not to get employed. There is something I would like you guys to find out. When I was doing research for this particular talk, I learned about something called a social capital theory. Social capital theory posits that one of the primary values of a father figure in a child's life, like daughter or son, is that they kind of work as a sort of conduit, connecting you to the society's resources and opportunities. Now, here's the thing. If you look at humanity traditionally, what happens is that, like even if you look at our history, fathers have been hunters, they've been farmers, they've been doing all these things that provide, and they've also been in charge. I mean, if you're gonna go around and say, I'm gonna use the word if you particularly like it, we have been patriarchal societies. And so the gatekeepers of social capital, which is just a term to mean like the networks, this is according to Wikipedia, the networks of relationships among people who live and work in a particular society, enabling that society to function effectively. So if you think of social capital, don't just think of the friendships you form, but think of the institutions that kind of define that society, like banks, the government, educational institutions, and so on. All of these institutions, by nature in patriarchal society, are going to be taken over by the patriarchs of the society. And so your father, by virtue of being a patriarch himself, connects you to this grander institution. He understands how these things work. It starts right from the time when he tells you this is how you hunt. And therefore, if he teaches you well, you become a good hunter, you bring in more food, you provide better for your family. and you also the other men in the village respect you more. Okay, but it goes beyond that. If he's a banker and teaches you how to be a good banker, then you go out there and you ace banking, you provide better for your family, you get respect from your fellow bankers, you get future deals, the social capital you're gaining. And you're also able, I mean, if you're going to look at things like the dating market, you're also able to secure a better mate and so on and have perpetual. This is value that a father provides, even for a woman, because if you're a girl being raised by a father teaches you necessarily how to, be hard and ruthless and, calculating and survive, makes you a strong woman, a strong member of society. So what you're saying about how your father taught you about the real value of university, which is to teach you in a way that allows you to create value for society and extract that value in the form of income, is a form of your father giving you social capital.
Personally, I think he was talking that in a sense of the current challenges that we are facing in Kenya, especially in terms of employment and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can trace back immediately when the whites left the colonial periods.
Okay.
Now we had so many industries that were upcoming. So people could go to universities and get absorbed immediately because there was a deficit in terms of the workforce.
Yeah.
And then we came in the 1980s, the 1990s, the introduction of technology. We still needed more personnel in the industries. New members had to be ushered into the industry.
Okay.
But now, more people came into the universities, and there was no balance. Now the industries are not coming up, as opposed to the number of students who are ushered to the economy. So my dad could analyze that kind of setting.
Yeah.
The students or the graduates have outweighed the number of companies or industries which are coming up, and he repeatedly said that, in fact, he wanted me to take a technical course.
Yeah.
One which I can finish and then...
Yeah, like a vocational
yeah,
one.
and
Just
then
gives you hard skills for jobs.
self-employed. So I think he really meant it, and he analyzed the world, the current situation and all that.
Yeah.
And I am very proud because he did not give so much teaching, but from the few teachings that he gave me, that is what I can say frankly.
I think that there is an added dimension to it. This is a theory of mine. And it's one of the things, we're talking about the archetype of the father according to Carl Jung. And one of the things about the archetype of the father is that it's supposed to encourage you to go out there and create your own value and create build your name up and make something of yourself. Encourage you to believe in your own capabilities. One of the things about getting a job is that the central tenet of getting a job is that you're looking for security. You're seeking security, seeking a regular paycheck. You want to know that at the end of the month you're getting a paycheck and all your problems are sorted automatically. This seeking of security is necessarily a form of weakness. It's safety, but it's weakness because, for starters, you have kind of delegated your sovereignty to someone else. I'm gonna come, I'm gonna serve you I'm gonna do stuff for you just so you can give me a feeling of comfort, I can sleep all at night, you can give me money. Yeah. And automatically, because you've delegated a lot of your rights to someone else, there is a natural glass ceiling to how much you can make. And there is also a tendency to want to, it's like running to someone's bosom, it's I want to stay here. But now, if you're in someone's bosom, you have to live by the rules. Meanwhile, if you seek to create a job, which is what your father was telling you, if you seek to create your own value, you're seeking freedom instead of security. Now, freedom comes with uncertainty, and uncertainty comes in security. You could fail spectacularly, but at the same time, there is no upper limit to how far up you can go. This is why we say naturally, if you really want to get rich, you have to be a business owner, you have to own a portion of a business, you have to be an entrepreneur. Nobody ever gets rich being an employee. And even if you become the CEO, sure, you could earn an insane amount of money, but it's still necessarily capped how much you can earn. Meanwhile, the world's richest person is not an employee. And if they're an employee, they're an employee of their own company. So, your father was teaching you to go out there, be courageous, which is a quality of the archetype. and actually seek sovereignty, seek freedom, which is a valuable quality for all genders, boys or girls or whatever, you know, to actually be courageous and go seek value for yourself. And this is a kind of value that you can necessarily get from fathers or men who embody the father archetype. Mothers necessarily, if you're going to call Jung's readings, the archetype of the mother to be overprotective, which can tend to be suffocating. And don't worry, I'll protect you from the world. Which can tend to be suffocating because it kind of like shields you from all these things in the world, and you don't get to experience them. And you finally face them, you're ill-equipped to face them, right? But your father is like, you need to get your stuff together, you know, and I'll be here, I'll help you out, but I'm not gonna mollycoddle you. You get it? So that's something that I think ties into the archetype that your father gave you. Do you think we have a single parent crisis in Kenya? We can start with your answer.
Well, I'd say it depends on who you're asking.
Okay.
I think we hear a lot of statistics being put out there that we have a lot of single parent families out there, and single moms mostly. I think every time we look through our Instagram, we'd see some lady out there who's not really posting any guy, but she's pregnant, and you know, she's doing shoots.
Or you're on Tinder.
Yeah,
I got to how many times on profile on Tinder.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm mother to an adorable boy.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you can't love my boy, please swipe left.
I mean,
I don't see enough.
It's exhausting. I'm sorry to say this, but it really is exhausting.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that you see a lot of young ladies in early 20s. They're doing like really magical shoots.
And baby showers.
Exactly, baby showers and all that. But there's no guy in the picture.
You're like, okay, so
I would say that to some extent there is a problem.
Okay.
But I also would say that we really underappreciate the existing families that are there. You know, like
full families.
Full families.
Okay.
Mother and father.
Okay.
You know, and we underappreciate the number of thriving families, I'd say. Yeah.
That's a good point. What about you, Peter?
Yeah, personally, I think single parenting crisis is there. It's not going to decline. It is going to be an uptrend, because when you realize initially the female gender was undermined, and the best way to undermine someone is to remove the authority they have. They have no say, they have no means, they have no freedom, and all that. But you realize now female gender is now getting more exposed in terms of education. Empowered is the word. So when the female gender is now empowered, okay, they become also authoritative. I mean, they can say, if you are providing, I can also provide.
Yeah, there are negatives to...
So the point is, single parenting issue, it is in an uptrend, especially when more women are empowered, more women are educated. They also understand their rights as women, and now men cannot command them in any way. So we find out that a lady is married to a man, the man starts commanding them, they decide to split up. If I can use the word, saizi pia wanawake wamejanjaruka. Yeah, it was not initially where...
That means women have got cover for our non-swap.
And you can even notice that in the Western countries.
Yeah.
The Western countries, more women are empowered, there's more divorce issues, there are so many single parents.
We talked about this last time, we talked about men's mental health, and we were like, especially in the West, like one of the landmark laws was like no fault divorce. Before, it only could be that you could divorce a man or a woman, it didn't matter. If there was a fault, they're being promiscuous, they're being abusive. The no fault divorce means you just like wake up one night, I don't want to be with this human being.
Yeah.
70% of divorces and no fault divorces are initiated by women.
Yeah. And I think we can benchmark this in a more traditional setup, where a woman does not have cows, a woman does not have lands. So they become inferior in that setting. And therefore, if she cannot provide, she cannot say anything. So So the man remains to command all the time. But now when you move to a less traditional setup, like in Nairobi, for instance, women have more ways of empowering themselves. They know how to hustle, they know how to do that. So they have replaced the place of a man, and therefore they don't need a man. In that, but men still have that.
I'm gonna cut you off right there because I feel like we're going to the next question. Just gonna go right ahead and ask it. We'll let you continue. And the next question was necessarily, why do you think we have a single parent crisis in Kenya? Obviously, both of you answered. You don't think we have a single, like, why? And like, what's the problem? And so like, that was an answer. And you already answered. You already began your answer. Yes.
On the why.
Yeah. So you can continue.
Yeah. So actually, there's something called toxic masculinity, where men still think they have the power to command, they have the power to direct, and it becomes a very difficult problem because I think it is something that is in the veins. As a man, not to be beneath a woman. But you find out now that women have more power.
You think most men would rather not be beneath women?
All of them, actually.
All of them?
Instinctively.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think this?
Yeah, because...
Like, why do you think men have this natural tendency to want to be above as opposed to below? Or even by the side of women?
I think it's all about stereotype, culture, and... because the more initially we've been from a culture where mwanaume ndio kusema.
Okay.
So that masculinity.
So it's like vestigial from our patriarchal roots.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I would have to disagree with that a bit. I would say that if you take your relationships into perspective,
okay,
certainly you have women who want their opinions to be heard and to be listened to.
Okay.
And to contribute equally to the relationship. But to some extent, you see that the lady wants you to take charge.
This is something I see so commonly in social media, even like when adverts, they call it red pill. It's like, nobody likes a simp. You know, it's like this common word. You're being a simp. You know, every woman wants a man who takes charge. Who's like, he knows what he wants, he goes for it, and the woman is like, you know, she's along for the ride.
Why do you hear so many women tell you, why don't you be a man?
Yeah, I think
what does that mean?
That is also an effect from the setup that we've been brought up from time immemorial. There's something called inferiority complex, where you've been living in a certain setting for some time, and the rules and the authority has undermined the way you think, the way you talk, and the way you present yourself generally.
Okay.
So when a woman says, or when a lady says, why would you be a man? It's because of this setup that they've been brought up since. But then they'll say that, but still want to air their opinion. They still want to have some position in that house.
Okay.
So it is contradicting as it is controversial.
I think the word I hear being used a lot in social, internalized misogyny. It's apparently women who prefer a submissive role to men have internalized the sexism. They have embraced it. So they're not necessarily actually in their best interest, but they are simply acting in the interest of whatever social values we're embedded. I do not agree with this, but that's a personal opinion. But it has been posited as internalized misogyny. So maybe that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, because if I take a step back in the religious setting, in traditional setting. Now, interestingly now, the ladies now who come out from this cult, if I may, they now realize their worth, they now realize their place, they now start fighting. That's where we hear about feminists and all this. So these are ladies who have come out from the cult, they've come out from the strings of injustice and all that. So they're trying to fight for other women. Unfortunately, other women are still in the strings of injustice.
This is an interesting point. It's an interesting point because what you're saying basically is that we have a situation where men are used to being in control, and because of certain global trends, that control has been wrested from them. And as as a result, it would seem that the role that men previously played in families and couples has now been rendered moot. So for example, if we were looking at pre-feminism era families, the man was provider and protector. And then feminism empowers women to be able to provide for themselves. And the government provides them with sufficient protection. I mean, what protection is a woman getting from you? There are no more bears or tigers that they can say. She's not particularly afraid of people mugging her. There's supposedly some kind of law enforcement in place. I'm assuming we're living in an ideal society. Like in Western society, a woman isn't, unless you're going to a very shady area, a woman is going to be like, oh, I need a man because, you know, I could be harassed by men here. It's like, the cops are there. Effectively, the government assumes a role of protection. And the government gives the woman the opportunity to provide for herself. Now, if the man in the family was playing the role of provider and protector, he has been robbed of his role. So women are like, why the hell do I need a man? And I guess this ties into like the standard article I was reading. It says that men have been reduced to nothing more than sperm donors. And insofar as you're incapable of providing in excess of whatever the woman can bring to the table, you are useless. Do you think this is the case in Kenya?
I definitely disagree.
Okay.
I think reducing men to sperm donors and cash dispensers and whatever is a very simplistic way of thinking about things.
Okay.
It's an overly simplistic way, I would say. It's also, I think, misleading to think that as a single individual, you can shape the life of a child. You know, whether you're a man or a woman. You can't pretend to be self-sufficient in furnishing someone with the tools they need to approach this life.
Okay.
That's why so many children from single-parent homes are ending up in prison.
The statistics are pretty interesting. Worldwide, for example, children who, boys especially, that come from fatherless homes, more likely to have behavioral problems, more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, the more likely to commit crime, and the more likely to go to prison. Closer home in Kenya, it is known, for example, that about 4 to 6% of inmates in Kenyan prisons were fatherless.
Exactly.
60% of juvenile inmates, that is those inmates below the age of 18, came from fatherless homes. But more importantly, 90% of convicted rape cases in Kenyan prisons, according to a study by a PhD student at the University of Nairobi, came from fatherless homes. That means for every 10 rapists, 9 of them were fatherless.
Exactly.
That shocked me. I did not know that before I saw that statistic.
And I'd have to say that not all of them are deadbeat dads. Some of them, they chose to be single.
The mothers.
Exactly. So it's like a ripple effect. It's like a circle that's just going, continue. I would say that it's very misleading to think that the reason why we have guys who can never take responsibility is because they were smothered by their mothers who are single parents.
I think personally, you cannot say it is a vicious cycle or something that is rotating. It is actually an uptrend. The reason why I say this, you can consider a case where you have a king versus subject relationship.
Yeah.
As long as the king is providing to the subject, the subject will always bow to the king. So the point here is, as long as the man is providing the lady, they are bound.
This brings a new dimension to the discussion, which is that as far as women are concerned, and of course this is one of those discussions that we're necessarily deficient because we need a woman to bring her perspective. We're a bunch of men. Yeah, but like as far as a woman is concerned, what exactly do women expect from a man in a relationship? Do they purely expect the man provide financially for the woman and the resulting family? Or is there more than a man can bring to the table that is not threatened by this current trend which you have where women are capable of providing for
Yeah, I
themselves?
think that's a very good question, and I think the reason why a woman needs a man in the house is now controversial because the dynamics have changed. I think now the main reason why a lady needs a man in the house is to be complete, is to fit in the social convention.
So then a lot of it has to do with societal expectations.
Societal
Like,
expectations.
Are you saying it's an
So-
idealistic role?
I'm not
Will
saying
you be a trophy?
no. The point here is
it does sound like that.
the point here is
Like I'm just a figurehead.
Exactly.
yeah. So the point here is women now they want to feel that sense of belonging, but the reasons now have changed. It is not like the past when it had to be for you to be a family, you need to be a man and all that. So for now it's more of to fit or to have a sense of belonging, because whatever men used to provide, now women can find for themselves. And the moment men don't want to strike that balance, the moment men don't want to agree or to meet half with such ideas, is when now women find it hard to
Okay,
still be under.
so let's say that women are capable of providing for themselves and they don't particularly need protection because we live in a modern society. What value do you think a man would bring to a family?
Now,
That a woman would say, I need a husband because of this.
when it comes now to siring children and mentoring them up to grow, to understand, the father figure is needed, is very vital.
Okay.
But then you see the reasons now that are opposing that when it comes, especially when it comes from women and the changing dynamics, they have outweighed the role of a father in the mentorship process.
Okay. Do you think a woman is capable of mentoring a child, girl or boy, to the same capacity as a father? Do you think a woman
Yeah,
can play both mother and father?
Actually, I am.
This is an interesting. We are getting to an interesting part of this discussion, guys.
Let me say why.
I disagree with that.
Let me say why.
Then you can.
Let me say why.
Yeah.
Alright, we're back, guys. We had to go have lunch, as you may be able to tell from the tired expressions on our faces. But the conversation had been at the point where I asked Peter here if he thinks that a woman can play the role of both mother and father in a young man's life, maybe even a young woman's life. And Isaac respectfully disagrees. So we're going to pick up right from there. So Isaac, why do you disagree?
Peter, was talking about how women have been empowered and now they can raise a child, they can meet the economic needs. I do agree that women are now empowered.
Yeah.
They have more economic power.
Yeah.
What I disagree with is the emotional contribution to the well-being of that child.
Okay.
In that, if you talk about one parent raising a child as both mother and father, that parent does not have two perspectives, they only have one perspective.
Okay, that's a good point.
So it's kind of like a biased kind of raising that child. It's a biased approach.
Yeah.
Because it's only one perspective. But you see, there is a benefit to having two parents because there's that dual kind of perspective.
Yeah.
There's that cooperation between the two parents, and the child grows up knowing what a two-parent family looks like. You see, when you raise children with a single parent out of choice, these children grow up not knowing how to relate with another person in the setting of a home.
Okay. And what would you say is the specific thing that a father brings to the table that a mother cannot?
Honestly, I can't put my finger on it right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same way you would say two heads are better than one.
Okay.
You can't really, take the fine print of where the one head, the two heads become better than one. You just know that that cooperation, that synergy brings out a better result compared to just that one perspective, that one head.
What do you think the future is going to be like as pertains to this particular topic? And can you suggest any solutions to any problems you perceive? Now, I think the question is kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah.
We have a situation. Where do you think it's headed? And if you had absolute fiat, what kind of solutions would you decree, based off of whatever your idea of an ideal world is? So, I'll let you pick up where you left off, Isaac. You think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand you think the problem is that it's heavily on the side of men. Men aren't performing their duties, and it's because they don't have enough role models. Do you think women share part of this blame? Do you think women are also responsible? And if not, if you think that it's solely men, where do you see this going, and what solutions would you suggest?
I'd go back to what we were talking about. Us having lived in a patriarchal society,
Okay.
men having taken leadership in certain things.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're talking about single parent families where men have that out of responsibility,
Yeah.
we're talking about men taking back their position of leadership, really.
Yeah.
And they have to start leading from the front.
Okay.
Because living in the society that we are in, it's a bit controversial, female empowerment and all that. But if I believe that when men take that initiative, we're going to see a lot more, a huge decline. And you see, when we go back, 100 years, say in Kenya,
Okay.
we're talking about where divorce was literally unheard of, single parent families was literally unheard of.
Yeah.
And we see a situation where a society where men mentored men.
Yeah.
Young men, once they go through the rites of passage, would go with the older men and learn how to take care of the needs of the community, needs of the family, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a serious lack of that today. When was the last time your dad sat you down and had a serious one-on-one about life, family planning, serious issues that are coming up today, technology, how not to derive your value from Instagram likes, for example. Your personal value as an individual. When was the last time you had a sit down with that kind of deep discussion, with him telling you, this is what should be important in your life?
These are your wife and most men.
Exactly. And so you see that lack of mentorship, and that is where you gain values such as responsibility for your children. A lot of men are running around out there not giving a hoot because they observed that in their own setting.
Okay.
The man in their life ran around without giving a hoot. You see a lot of problems such as infidelity, as you said. Some of these things is something you observed. A wife beater, for example, most of the time, the guy whose wife beating saw his father wife beating.
Okay.
And so there's a serious lack of positive mentorship. And I believe that when you approach it from a mentorship perspective, some of the problems, at least most of that problem, will be resolved.
What about you, Peter?
Yeah, I think I've listened quite some time, and I have some interesting views on the same. To begin with, I think so much has changed, as I insisted, and we have shifted from value-oriented kind of upbringing to environmental-based. Because even if you consider the time that maybe kids have with their parent, it has immensely shifted. Now we find out that parent has only a week or two, then they go back to school. So the question, therefore, it is very difficult. It's not really a question but a concern. It's difficult to measure the effect of a parent to a kid, whether a figurative role as a father or an advisory role as the mother. So it becomes very difficult to measure, to blame, or to direct concerns to a specific parental role, especially when currently it is the guardians now who are looking out for the kids. It is the schools, okay? It is the friends, the peers who kids or young men spend time with. I think we need now to embrace these new changes. They say when the world gives you lemon, you make lemonade or lemon juice out of it. So how do we embrace these changes to shape what we want our young men to be as far as fatherhood is concerned?
Maybe I can just touch on that. As much as kids are in school, let's say we have a 4-month period, kids are in school for 13 out of those 16 weeks.
Okay.
We're talking about 3 weeks that a parent has an opportunity with their child outside of that school environment.
Yeah.
And so that brings in that aspect of being intentional about that time that you have, that opportunity that you have.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Exactly. So, if we don't shape a child, if we don't show a child the way he should go, the world, tunaambiwa asiyofunzwa na mamaye hufunzwa na dunia.
So for a non-English speaker, if your mother doesn't step up, the world's going to teach you.
Exactly. So that just brings out the intentionality of the parent during that opportunity that they have with the child, regardless of the length of that opportunity.
I understand your concern. My point was actually the fact that parents have less time. We cannot ignore the fact that they need to be there for their kids. And then the question is, how do we maximize these social conventions as far as parenting and respect and all that upholding is concerned, to benefit these kids? And now that they are given to the world, how do we make this world a better place for them in coaching them to be better persons or to be better young men, as I've talked about? So the point is, fathers should guide their kids, but given that they have less time, we should then look out for means of these guardians or schools to come up with ways on how these young men or kids can grow spiritually and mentally or morally upright. So I think that is a very big concern. Unfortunately, in third world countries like Kenya, we don't give attention to social issues. We don't have therapies, and if they exist, they are very expensive. They are inaccessible. So part of the solution that you asked, I think, talking more like these conversations we are having here, they are very paramount and vital to such issues. In the beginning, I said I did not think the role of my dad until I was introduced now that there will be a conversation on this particular. Then I started backtracing. And then I started analyzing and seeing the importance. So we need to have such social talks. We need to have such therapies. We need to embrace the world in form of technology now. How do we introduce these issues in technology so that these kids have more accessible social knowledge in the event they are growing up? So I think that's my take.
What would you tell a good upbringing by a father? We've talked about how fathers are necessary. We've belabored the point, but even when the father's out there, what would you call a good father? Because we must agree that there are lots of families where the father was present and still it was it didn't turn out very well.
It is hard to admit, and bitter as it may sound, family is something like a biological illusion. That we like every mammals or the innate nature of any mammal is to subscribe to this illusion. This includes the dopamines, the affection, the intimacy, and all that. So it is kind of an illusion or a spell that is casted among us, and it is very difficult to see a brother suffer or to see a mother suffer.
Yeah.
So instinctively, good parenting means subscribing to this illusion.
Yeah.
Good parenting means adhering to the obligation. They say that you should not ignore your obligation at the expense of any retribution.
Okay.
Even if your kid is bad, it is still your responsibility to bring them back to order. It is still your responsibility to make sure they feed. It is still your responsibility to make sure they have good clothing and shelter. So to me, good parenting is subscribing to these biological illusions. If you don't subscribe to that, they will go astray. They will start stealing, they will start robbery, they will start all that kind of behavior. So good parenting is subscribing to all these aspects that is required.
Strictly speaking, okay, what would you tell a bad father and what would you tell a good father? Can you think of any particular qualities?
I think that's straightforward. And a good father will provide, will guide, will nurture, will even want the young man to be better.
Okay.
He will cherish, okay, and as it is limited, would give more advice. Like Isaac said, it is very rare now to find a parent talking about sex issues, talking about education issues, talking about all those kinds of sensitive subjects. So I think good parenting involves subscribing to all those entities. And bad parenting is the complete opposite.
Okay, what about you, Isaac?
If I would say what a good father is, I would think of it this way. When you're starting the construction of a building,
okay,
you have to think about the quality of the foundation that you're going to set.
Yeah.
And a father is the equivalent of that foundation.
Okay.
In the construction of a building.
Yeah.
A good father, and first of all, I would have to say that a father is the man.
Yeah.
And so he has to be a good man first to be a good father.
Okay.
And so I do believe that one of the strongest traits of a good father is the ability to be good to his spouse.
Okay.
Because that embodies something very powerful to the children.
Okay.
That they live in a secure environment.
Yeah.
That they live in a loving environment.
Yeah.
And that there is stability in where they're growing up.
Yeah.
And so I would say that is the first characteristic I would say that is a characteristic of a good father.
Okay.
Secondly, then he becomes that father. He becomes that foundation, that stepping stone for his children to become better individuals.
Yeah.
He's a value addition to his children.
Okay.
Like the social capital theory you talked about, he is able to impart some capabilities, some skills, some capacities in his children that enable them to survive in this world. Yeah. Like you said, we're not living in an ideal world. Yeah. So he has to, like Peter said, bring the environment, the current environment, to become the reality of his children, of his family. Yeah. And then give them the skills necessary to thrive in that situation. But I'd also say that a good father does not work alone. Okay.
So he collaborates.
He collaborates with others.
Okay.
Because good outcomes, no one is an island. You know, there is a perspective as a man that you have that I don't have that would add value to me and to my family if we linked up and got together and shared some ideas. Yeah. That would definitely bring some new perspectives in your way of life. Yeah. In my way of life, and then cause some improvements. So I do believe that to some extent collaboration is very important.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would love to continue. And the interesting is we could continue because there's a lot to talk about on this subject, but we're going to have to cut it short. As you can see, there are a lot of interesting points to be brought up about the issue of fatherhood and the value it brings to a young man's life. But we're going to leave you to continue that discussion in the comment section.
I think wrapping up the entire topic, in the entire kingdom Animalia, there are natural instincts to take care of the young ones. You can see even animals taking care of the young ones.
Okay.
So it is the innate nature of any mammal of any kind to take care of the young ones. And when we talk about being busy, I think it is optional. So taking care, it's like an obligation, more of a duty, that you cannot ignore or give any excuse of being busy or something. Because the moment you ignore, there are consequences. And good thing, you've already learned the consequences, you've seen the consequences. So there's already a playbook that we have seen of parents who have neglected their kids.
Yeah.
And if we want to follow the playbook, you are either following the playbook from the bright side or from the dark side.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to parenting, whether a father or a mother to a son or a daughter, it is an obligation that is not bound to any excuse. Thank you.
Wow, that's a very profound point. Yeah. Would you like to make any closing remarks, Isaac?
I think Peter has just said it in totalities.
Okay.
Beautifully said.
And do you have any plugs to make, Peter?
I'm an introvert, I'm not a social media person.
So is it that you do not have social media profiles? You do not like to share them?
Maybe WhatsApp, but it's for business.
I cannot give you social media.
Like
That's up to
Facebook,
you.
I'm off. Instagram, I'm off. Twitter, I'm off. Only WhatsApp and email.
I mean, just a side point, I'm noticing that it's becoming some kind of social statement to be absent from social media. It's like status signals.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. If I were to give a closing remark, it's that this discussion has been illuminating, to say the least. We were actually having a huge discussion off camera about our personal beliefs, especially relating these matters, and it was very interesting to get other people's perspectives. One thing you have to realize that more important than being right is being able to listen to others and being able to hear different perspectives, because it gives you ammunition with which to it gives you tools with which to interrogate yourself and find the truth. More often than not, most debates today are about who's right as opposed to what the truth is. It's some kind of sparring match. And I would like to think that this isn't the right kind of debate. We should be seeking the truth together, assuming, of course, that it exists. Today's discussion was a demonstration of that. I really enjoyed it. I personally have no plugs to give yet. I'm working on some. I do have social media profiles, just that they're half-baked at the moment, so I don't want to share them. But yeah, in due time. Other than that, this was a wonderful discussion. It's nowhere near over. It's just that some kind of spark to ignite the fires so other people can start discussions. Please share with us your comments in the comment section, and we're more than happy to oblige and respond. And until next time, it is us, and this is the Land series on the Social Circle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ona tumefika mwisho, giza imetuingia. Lala mtoto mpenzi, yote sasa, yote yote.